What about the neighbors who, some of whom I know are saying that it's just so different from the neighborhood. It's so out of keeping, if you will, the project with the neighborhood. That's, I mean...
Well, I don't disagree. No, it's a change. There's no question it's a change. The challenge, and we find this in many communities, is through zoning, land use restrictions, you know, all these...
I thought 40B pretty much trumped that.
Well, it does until the community hits 10% affordable housing. So what happens is you find communities that put all these restrictions in place, and basically, you know, the availability of housing goes in the direction it's gone in Nantucket. And that, quite frankly, is why they have 40B. But it's also a process that has a lot of dialogue. We have an incentive to work with the neighbors. We have an incentive to work with the Zoning Board of Appeals. You know, we don't want to wait years to start construction. And it could be years if we don't work with them and we don't come to a consensus. Would like to make it sooner than that. But the other side of it is, you know, the state realizes in many communities similar to Nantucket how challenged they are for land. There's very, very little land that's available. So with what's available, they want you to use a compact, sustainable neighborhood approach. Many communities that we've gone to aren't really familiar with compact, sustainable neighborhoods. They tend to be these suburban communities with 1 and 2 acre house lots. Nantucket has probably some of the best examples of compact, sustainable neighborhoods, and they're in town and they're in Sconset. We've looked at those. We've actually run the calculations. There's many neighborhoods where the density exceeds 30,000 square feet of living space per acre. We're below 30,000. We're at 28,000. We're close to it, so we are in that neighborhood. But they're great examples. And these are examples that were built in many cases 100 years ago. They're also examples where they have high property values. So we think we can work with the community where we heard a lot of comments the other night. And, you know, these are the type of examples of, you know, some of the wonderful properties that you have in Nantucket that are compact, sustainable neighborhoods. You know, fortunately, they just stopped building them. So, you know, we look to try to work.
They also fit a lot of people in them back in the old days.
Sure.
Huge numbers of people in some of these houses.
And just to comment on that, because that question has also come up, under the housing guidelines that we have to work under, the affordable units have very strict requirements on the number of people per bedroom based on age, based on sex, and those type of things. And they work very well. We're going to use those same guidelines on the market rate units because we don't want them overwhelmed with people. The other thing that is important to us with this proposal is, you know, to try to hit a critical mass that allows us to manage it and manage it really well. To do that, we're at 60 units, but within that, and you know, all of our pro formas, all of our budgets, all that information is public. What we show is we have 1 unit, and it has to be a market rate unit that's dedicated to an on-site full-time manager. To manage it properly, we have to have someone that lives there and is watching it, gets to know all the residents, but make sure that if an apartment is supposed to have, you know, 3 occupants or 4 occupants or 5 occupants, it doesn't turn into 15 occupants. You know, I know there's examples on the island people have talked to us about where there's small pockets where, you know, they have housing that's on the affordable side, but at the same time, some of these units are overwhelmed or homes are overwhelmed where they have 15 people living in them. We don't want that, but the only way to do it is to have the full-time on-site manager that lives there and lives there with his family, with the other families. But at the same time, we have to make the economics work. So that's why we're basically up at that critical mass. It also allows us to provide the amenities that people are looking for. You know, in some cases, off-island, people tend to live more short-term in apartments, you know, maybe a year or 2 or 3. Here, where 90% can't afford to buy, we expect people to be living there for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years.
What would be the average lease term?
Well, we could do it in a couple of ways. On the affordable units, they have to follow the guidelines, and they tend to just roll over. On the market rate units...
Roll over every year?
They roll over, but the people can, as long as they meet the requirements, they can continue to stay. If their income goes above, then they could potentially roll into a market rate unit. On the market rate units, generally we look at 1-year leases. However, a lot of people have asked to do longer term leases, and we're absolutely willing to do that. We'll have to build in some adjustments for utility costs and things like that. But again, we're restricted by the 10% return.
Right.
So no, but it's a question that keeps coming up. And no, from our standpoint, long-term tenants are a very good thing. We've also had a number of businesses that have approached us and said we have a real need to keep employees we're losing employees because of housing, and what is the possibility of trying to work to achieve apartments for our employees. So we're hearing from all sides, which is very encouraging. But like I say, the first people I met with on this island were our direct neighbors. We realized that the impact to them is unique. I mean, it's different than the people across the street or down the street. And we want to continue to work with them because we want to build a very nice community, but we want to minimize the potential impacts to them at the same time.
You've done this elsewhere, I assume.
Yeah, our developments, and we've done about 4 million feet of retail, so we've done a lot of shopping centers, but they've also included about 3,000 units of housing, all different types, senior housing, apartments.
Including 40B?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know whereof you speak in respect of how these things operate.
We partnered with a large operator, and we did the 40B, the biggest 40B ever done in the state, and it was in my hometown.
In Hingham.
And it's in 7-story buildings. And it's a senior community that we're very proud of. When we started on it, a lot of people wouldn't talk to me in town. They just thought this was going to change the face of Hingham, and it was going to be horrible.
It's not Hingham.
It's
not Nantucket.
No, but at the same time, when you look at the need side, after the first roughly 1,200 people, it's 2,000 units. It's a huge senior community. After the first 1,200 people moved in, we did a study, and of those 1,200 people, 49% of them were seniors above. It's 62 and over, but generally above 75. They had incomes between $25,000 and $30,000 a year, and they can live there for the rest of their life. So to us, when you're dealing with that type of a need, I mean, it took us a long time, but afterwards, I'll tell you, many of the people that I knew in town that wouldn't talk to me, their parents are living there. So we've been through this before, but we really do want to work with the neighbors. We want to work with the community. I've never seen a rental need for workforce, anything even close to this. I mean, there are stories about these extreme commuters, but that's a big challenge to family life. And to the extent that we can actually allow families to stay on this island in an affordable way, whether it's the affordable units, the market rate units, we're very much looking forward to it.
The elephant in the room here is the property next door.
Sure, yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. The Boy Scout camp.
Yeah. And
you have a contract with the Cape Cod Council to...
No, I'm happy to explain the details.
Please do.
Yeah, we don't have a signed agreement with them, but we were the developer that they were working with, and we've done a couple of other developments.
Did that come first before the Surfside Commons project? Or
yeah, that's a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So what happened is we've done a few developments on the island. We did the new headquarters for Cape Cod 5 on Pleasant Street. We tried to put a grocery store between the Boys and Girl Club and Sanford Road. Went through the permitting process. Quite frankly, could not get a grocery store to commit because of the challenge of housing. We actually had a final grocery store was ready to go. The reason they would not go is because of the housing. And ultimately, Stop and Shop leased it from us, intending to build a new store. Yeah. The town wanted to go to the existing site, but the site that they've leased from us will, just because I brought it up, will get developed. What we're looking at doing is doing a retail building on that site with a deep warehouse basement, which Stop and Shop needs, and then have Stop and Shop employee housing on the second floor, which they desperately need. They weren't able to do it in their new store because their storage is in that mezzanine level. Right. So going back to that, so that really gave us some background in the need of employee housing when we couldn't get a grocery store to come to this island specifically because of that issue. So what happened is,
other people have been trying to get grocery stores to come here too, and I have to wonder also if it isn't really the economics of whether this island can support two garages, just as an aside.
No, that's part of the question, but I'll tell you what happened with us just on that, since you brought it up, is many of the grocery store chains, as they expand, they might build 2 stores a year, 10 stores a year, whatever it might be. You get into the Nantucket discussion, on the surface it looks like Stop and Shop does a high volume, seems like they make a lot of profit, there's got to be an opportunity. You get into it, and now you say, let's split it into 2 stores. Now they'll compete. For the customer, it would be good because prices will probably go down. But then when you look at the profitability of that, plus the complication of operating, basically they all said, you know what, we're going to do 4 new stores next year. We'll do them where we're used to building them, dealing with the issues we're used to dealing with. So back on the Boy Scouts. So
just let me just say on that, because I think it's something that people have been wondering about, and I think that it's important for people to understand that there are economic issues with another grocery chain coming in here. So thank you for your comments on that.
No, happy, and we've done a lot of grocery stores, so we thought we could get one to come, but